Welcome. Russia has unveiled a revised nuclear doctrine, reshaping its strategic approach to nuclear warfare. This updated posture carries significant implications for global security, particularly in light of shifting international alliances and tensions. Today in Think Tank, we analyze the key changes in Russia's nuclear strategy and explore how these developments could alter the balance of power and influence global stability. The Guardian has reported that the U.S. Embassy in Kyiv closed due to warnings of a potential airstrike, urging citizens to prepare for shelter. Russia claimed to have inflicted significant Ukrainian losses as Ukraine marks 1,000 days of war. The Kremlin rejected any ceasefire, criticizing Western support for Ukraine. Russia's intelligence chief warned NATO against striking inside Russia, and Belarus condemned the U.S. for approving Ukraine's use of long-range missiles. Additionally, Russia detained a German citizen accused of organizing sabotage in Kaliningrad. The U.S. approval of Ukraine to use advanced weaponry, including ATACMS missiles, marks a pivotal shift in the conflict, amplifying risks of a broader geopolitical confrontation. This move not only intensifies NATO-Russia tensions, but also raises profound questions about the strategic calculus behind U.S. policy.
The U.S. decision to allow Ukraine to strike deep inside Russian territory with advanced weaponry, such as the ATACMS missiles, has escalated tensions between NATO and Russia, raising critical questions about the West's long-term intentions. This strategic shift, authorized by U.S. President Joe Biden, gives Ukraine the capability to target Russian military assets well beyond the front line, potentially altering the course of the conflict. However, the implications of such strikes are profound, as they risk provoking Russia into a more aggressive response, including potentially using nuclear weapons. Russian President Vladimir Putin's recent amendments to Russia's nuclear doctrine, linking the use of nuclear weapons to threats against territorial integrity, has made these strikes particularly sensitive. Ukraine's continued adherence to U.S. directives, despite previous calls for peace, has drawn mixed reactions globally. President Zelensky, while publicly accepting a peaceful resolution, follows Washington's strategy to secure a strong bargaining position in future negotiations. This dynamic raises the question: is Ukraine acting in its national interest, or is it being drawn into a larger geopolitical struggle orchestrated by the West? The U.S. decision has also sparked criticism, particularly from the president-elect Donald Trump, who views Biden's stance as pushing the world toward a potential global confrontation. As Ukrainian attacks intensify, Russian officials warn of escalated risks, with growing concerns that these actions might not only prolong the war, but could also set the stage for a new Cold War, threatening global security.
Now, with more analysis about the most recent updates in the Russia-Ukraine war, joining us now from Moscow is Dr. Vincent Ligoriot, the director at Analytica for Intelligence, and from California, Dr. Steven Zunes, a professor of international security and foreign policy. Welcome to the program. Now, let me start from Moscow. Dr. Vincent, now, how do you interpret the shift in Russia's nuclear doctrine amid U.S. support for Ukraine's deep strikes?
Good afternoon. Well, it was something that was quite affected already from few weeks, let me say, because we knew that, let me say, before the Trump and victory, and Harris, let me say, defeat, I read as a clear political move from the Kremlin, a clear message to the West, not only to the US, but to all the NATO alliance. And it's a clear message where Putin, but all his leadership and entourage said that do not prevaricate, do not overgo this red line because we will be ready to respond. We know that before the nuclear power in the Russian doctrine could respond to another nuclear power. Now the paradigm and the doctrine completely changed, and this would lead to an escalation. So we would like to see if Kiev will have the courage and will be so brave to follow the directive of Washington, or will wait for a long-range attack into
But
the
in this
Russian territory.
complete change, Dr. Vincent, do you see any key element that shocked you as a surprise in this change?
Well, as an analyst, no. I was surprised, but I think that the public would be surprised and shocked because we see a cardinal change, and we see that any country now backed by a nuclear power can be a target from Russian Federation.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Stephen, now, how do you interpret this shift? What does it mean, in your opinion, that Russia would alter its nuclear doctrine?
Obviously, they are concerned that the United States is now allowing Ukraine to use American-made missiles to attack into Russia itself. Ukraine has been asking for permission to do this for many, many months, but the United States under Biden was reluctant because it could indeed threaten an escalation and some kind of response such as this from Russia. But I think the thinking was that with Trump coming in and his less likely to support Ukraine, that there is this small window of opportunity in the next 2 months before Trump assumes office on January 20th for Ukraine to get at least some strategic advantage in those 2 months, and perhaps be in a stronger bargaining position in case there are negotiations.
But isn't it making it harder for the next administration, for Donald Trump, to be quite frank, to try to reach any kind of deal or de-escalation?
I think Trump will do what Trump is going to do. He's not, unlike a lot of presidents, he's not that concerned about the precedent of what previous administrations have done. The one area, there are obviously legitimate reasons to be concerned about the shift in U.S. policy. I would disagree that the analysis that Ukraine is doing this on behalf of the United States. Ukraine would be fighting and would continue to fight the Russian invasion, even if they no longer had United States support. So I really, and so even if Trump abandons Ukraine altogether, Ukraine will keep fighting. The Europeans will probably increase their support, but it would certainly put Ukraine in a even more disadvantageous position relative to the stronger Russian forces. I think also another factor I should just mention is that the presence of as many as 10,000 North Korean troops who are apparently, some of whom apparently are engaged in combat, was another reason that Biden may have decided to escalate things by allowing Ukraine to use these missiles on Russian territory.
Okay, before we dig deeper into this discussion, let's take a moment and examine part of these capabilities of these missiles in the next presentation. Let's take a look. Stay with us. That was a presentation on the capabilities of Russia's nuclear arsenal and also of the change that it implemented on its nuclear doctrine. Now, Dr. Vincent, Dr. Stephen mentioned something very interesting and raised the question about is Ukraine actually acting in its national interest, or is it being drawn into a larger geopolitical struggle, perhaps orchestrated by the West? What's your take on this?
I think the answer is twofold. Yes, he's responding to his interest to defend itself, as let me say, the doctrine, international doctrine say. But on the other side, I read that there are other actors that are pushing to Ukraine to use right now. Although in the past, Zelensky asked to use this long-range missile, the ATACMS. So I think that at the moment, the answer is twofold, and Kiev should consider the risk that this may lead.
Dr. Stephen, this comes at a time when we're seeing the embassies in Kyiv being closed. Do you think there's any connection to this? And what do you think is going to happen with the escalation that is surrounding Kyiv right now? And perhaps are there any threats that might be in the time being?
By one party inevitably leads to escalation by the other, or at least the threat thereof. And so apparently the State Department believed that it had reasons to be concerned that Russia might engage in a direct attack on the U.S. embassy. And so I think this was the part of the precaution here. But I think the U.S. position, of course, is that the Biden administration, as you know, takes this position that they have to hold firm and support Ukraine, no matter what the risk of escalation, because no country can unilaterally change international boundaries. No country can expand its territory by force. And while that's a valid argument, the problem is that the United States has recognized Israel's illegal annexation of Syria's Golan Heights, the only country in the world that has. They recognized Morocco's illegal annexation of the entire nation of Western Sahara, virtually the only country that's done that as well. So one has to wonder, why is the United States supporting Ukraine really? Is it about principle of international law? Or is it about a kind of proxy war? And so that's why I think the Russians, do have this really skeptical view about United States motivation, and why Washington fears that its embassy and its personnel may be at risk.
Dr. Vincent, let me take your opinion on this. The closure of the embassies, does it implicate, or does it perhaps send any kind of message here, or is the message coming from Moscow?
It's not the first time that in the last week's embassy closed. Today, of course, several embassies declared to close: the Greek embassy, the Italian embassy, the US. And so this, I think, that is a form of message from Moscow. I think that there is some intelligence that say that an attack will reach Kiev once more. And this is not like, I don't read as, a huge threat for the United States or for other European or NATO partners staying in Kiev. It's, I think, part of the war, part of this game, dramatic game that is like a strike and respond. We know that Kiev attacked several regions on the border, Bryansk and other region inside the territory of the Russian Federation. And of course, every time this happened, every time Moscow had been attacked in infrastructure and military bases, the response was quite tough and could reach, of course, Kiev. I think that this is arrived just as a sort of intelligent message received by Western country, and they decided to take this measure.
Dr. Stephen, now obviously there's escalation in tensions amid these developments. Now, do you think there could be any roles for any countries to de-escalate the nuclear rhetoric, at least surrounding this conflict? For example, China perhaps might have a role. What's your take on this?
Unfortunately, the international community is very divided. A lot of the European countries, which have historically pushed the United States to restrain in terms of the invasion of Iraq, in terms of its support for Israel, if you go back in history, intervention in Central America in the 1980s, and of course the Vietnam War before that. But now you have Europe largely united on the side of the United States, even historically neutral countries like Sweden. So it would have to come somewhere from the global South if there was going to be countries that could play a mediating role, and China would seem to be a logical partner. I mean, they have not while they have not supported the West position, they have not all out supported Russia either. So they would seem to be a possible logical mediator.
But with the current developments, Dr. Stephen, would the U.S. agree to abide by any kind of facilitation or mediation right now?
Not under the Biden administration. It's possible that Trump might be open to it, but of course Trump likes to run things himself. I mean, he likes to be the deal maker. So I think he would try to take credit, at least, if there was some kind of settlement. And of course, he's very, very hostile to the Chinese. Even if he may not take as strong a position on the role of China. So on the role of the United States in terms of supporting Ukraine. So again, having China as an intermediary, it may make some sense in theory. I think in practice, given both Biden's hardcore support for Ukraine and Trump's skepticism of China, it's probably not very likely.
Dr. Vincent, your take on this: could China have a role in de-escalating at least the nuclear rhetoric right now? Perhaps that's proposed by Russia in the past few hours.
I think here not only China can play a role, but also India. We know that Vladimir Putin will go to New Delhi in the near future, so in the short term, and we know the contrast position also in the negotiation and in the role for the global South on the leadership in the BRICS between China and India. I think the actors can be two here. So I think that Modi can play also a better role on the international arena rather than Xi. So we will have to explore this eventuality, this possibility. China has also his own problem, should understand what will be the second Trump administration after 4 years of Biden administration. So I think that the best position here is for India to play in the short run. But I agree with my fellow colleagues that Trump is, let me say, solitary player. So he's a man that likes to get not only credit but to play a solitary role. So I think that this eventuality will be only in the short run.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. That was Dr. Vincent Ligario, the Department Director of Geopolitics at Analytica for Intelligence from Moscow, and Dr. Steven Zuns, Professor of International Security and Foreign Policy from California. Thank you both for your insights. That brings us to the end of today's episode of Think Tech. Stay tuned for more exclusive stories here on Q News. Thank you for watching.